So let's go on to part 2 now, which is what I've termed common mechanics. This is a number of changes that you'll typically see throughout the game. The first one is mandatory use of radios. Now, I've already mentioned this in the context of penalty enforcement, but there are a total of 5 situations where if you've got radios, you must use them. So the first of these is about the game clock. So anyone can request the time. The timekeeper replies, and it's not in the mechanics manual, but my tip is to say the time twice, but in slightly different ways. So, for example, if there's 1 minute and 34 seconds remaining, then say there's 1:34 remaining, that's 1:34. And the fact that you've said it twice, the fact that you've said it 2 different ways, increases the chances that the hearer will hear it correctly. A new thing is that we want somebody on the crew, and that would normally be the referee, to repeat it back over the radio to acknowledge it. So the referee might say, that's 1:34, thanks. Got that. This is accepted radio practice in many environments, that by repeating back what you've heard, you confirm that you've heard it, and you also allow the timekeeper in this case to say, oh no, you've misheard it, it is, and make a correction. So that's a good thing to do. The second thing that's mandatory, now I think most crews already do this, but when the back judge gives the play clock warning to the referee, usually with 12 seconds remaining on the play clock, they should always do that over the radio. Again, that allows everybody else to hear it. Third thing we've already covered is reporting the foul, what foul was called, which team it's against, and the number of the player involved. If the calling official should happen to forget to do this, then the referee should do it before they do anything else, before they conduct any other part of the penalty administration process. Another thing to do is to confirm the score. So after an extra point, a field goal or a safety, the referee should say, right, I've got home 27, visitors 10. And then somebody, normally the timekeeper, should repeat it back again to confirm that it's been heard correctly. And please also give the home team score first and the visitors second. That's the normal way of doing things in most places in the world. There's one country in North America that does it differently, but I think they're just an isolated example of that. And the final one, where use of radios is mandatory, is if the referee wants the crew to switch into onside kick mechanics. And again, although it doesn't say on the slide, we would like someone on the crew to acknowledge that they've heard that. Another everyday mechanic is managing substitutions. But we're a little bit concerned that, in fact, people over-officiate this. And so we want to make it clear that the process of managing substitutions, giving signals, preventing Team A from snapping the ball, is only necessary when Team A makes substitutions and the snapper is at, near, or moving towards the position to snap the ball. If everybody from Team A is still in the huddle, there's no need to worry about it. And Team B have plenty of time to catch up. The rule was introduced to avoid Team A quickly snapping the ball after having made a substitution. If they're not going to quickly snap the ball, then there's no need to officiate this as if they were. We're a little bit concerned that, as I say, crews are over officiating this and sometimes ignoring other pre-snap responsibilities. So, they're not counting the teams, for example, or they're ignoring some other communication with their crewmates or sideline or whoever. One change to this is we've renamed the signal, supplementary signal 36 is now known as the matching substitute signal. I think it was called the substitution disadvantage signal. So it's now the matching substitute signal. I know some people call it the iron cross, and I just don't think that's politically correct. I don't think we should be using terminology like that. It's the matching substitute signal. So, how have the mechanics changed for this? Well, as before, the referee needs to hold the signal until Team B finishes its substitutions, or if after 3 seconds it hasn't started substituting, well, then it's too late. We want the centre, if there is one, or the umpire, if there isn't, not the centre judge, or the umpire to take a position over the ball. And while you're over the ball, think about how you're going to get away from it, plan your exit route. And when the referee drops the signal, we want you to tell the snapper and the quarterback to wait for you to tell them to snap the ball. Then you go, and when you're a safe distance away, you can say, okay, you can snap it now. A change for other officials is we don't want them to hold the matching substitute signal forever. We only want them to hold it for as long as it takes for the referee to give the signal. Once the referee is giving the signal, everybody else can rest their arms. But just to stress that this applies to all the other officials on the crew, the officials on the sidelines, the back judge, even the umpire in a situation where you've got a centre judge. They're all in good positions to know that Team A is making substitutions under these circumstances. So anybody on the crew can be the first one to give that signal, but you only need to hold it for as long as it takes until the referee picks it up. And then to stress in the mechanics what it says in the rules is that any official can and should shut down a play that violates the substitution rule. So if by accident Team A do snap the ball before Team B have had the opportunity to make matching substitutions, then we should shut the play down, and the rules provide for a warning for the first offence and then penalties for subsequent offences. So anybody on the crew can do that. Okay, another mechanics change. This one only applies to 3XX crews, so that's where you've got a centre judge. We've had long debates about this as to whether the referee and the centre judge should watch the guard and tackle on the opposite side of the formation or on the same side of the formation. What we're switching to now is to watch the officials, watch the linemen on the same side as the formation. So this diagram illustrates that, assuming here we've got a right-handed quarterback, so the referee will be on the right side of the formation. He's watching the right tackle, the right guard, and the quarterback. The centre judge, who's over on the left side of the formation, is watching the guard and tackle on that side. We've got a few changes to mechanics associated with timing. We've decided that where you've got a field judge. So this would be a crew of with 2 or 3 deep officials. Then the crew can decide whether it's going to be the line judge or the field judge who runs the game clock. There are strong views in favour of keeping it with the line judge. There are equally strong views about giving the job to the field judge. Let's leave it to the crew to decide. It may depend on who's most experienced as a timekeeper, which of those positions that person is working in. We've also introduced a lot of flexibility about who actually runs the game clock. So the first of those is that if there is some technology that allows the stadium clock, because having a stadium clock is obviously the preferred way of doing this. If there's some technology that allows that to be controlled on the field or near the field, then it's okay to use it. So the timekeeper, the line judge or the field judge might be able to do it directly if the stadium clock can be controlled from some watch-like device that they're wearing. That I've never seen such a device, but if such one exists, it's okay to do it. The other way of doing it is to have an assistant on the sideline who they've got the control unit. They keep close to the timekeeper and they respond to their instructions. Another option, given you've got radio, is to have an official's assistant off the field running the clock. So it occurred to me at the British Bowl Games last autumn that I think it was Roger Goodgroves who was running a game clock for the benefit of TV. So it was only for TV's benefit. Well, Roger was doing that informally, but he could just as easily have been the official timekeeper and communicating the time remaining to the officials on the field with radio. So where you've got someone who's experienced and qualified and able to do this from, say, a vantage point in the stands, then that is an option that can be employed. The one thing that we never want is for the video judge to be running the clock. We want the video judge to be watching the game and doing other things. So don't give the clock to the video judge. And then finally, to clarify something about the 2-minute warning. A few years ago, NCAA CFO changed signal S4. So the TV radio timeout signal had previously been the referee giving a T hand signal to the press box, and they changed it to outstretched arms. Now we said at the 2-minute warning, give signal S4. So a lot of referees have been giving the outstretched arm signal. But because that can be confused with other things, notably the matching substitute signal, also the unsportsmanlike conduct penalty signal, and even some incomplete pass or penalty decline signals, we want for the 2-minute warning to go back to using the T hand signal. So that has now been added to the mechanics manual as supplementary signal 45. A new section 521 in the mechanics manual is entitled Pivotal Plays. This is really to raise people's awareness of what are the key points in a game. Some plays make a significant difference to the game. Most plays are routine, but those that are pivotal, we want officials to recognise those and respond appropriately. And by pivotal plays, that includes all types of scoring play, because that changes the score. That's what the game's all about. Changes of possession, because that considerably influences the ability of a team to score. Fourth down plays where Team A goes for it, because that is the outcome of that play might involve a change of possession. Third down plays that end close to the line to gain, because that might make a significant difference as to whether Team A has to punt the ball away or whether they get the ball for a new series. And then when you're running out of time in a close game, pretty much every play is a pivotal play. Also, trick plays. Anytime that a team runs a trick play, that can be pivotal. Now, sometimes you recognise a pivotal play before it starts because of the game situation or because of the way that the teams line up in formation. Or sometimes you recognise it during the play because of what happens or where the play ends. And also, we can make a play pivotal because we call a foul during it. Or a player not involved in the play can make it pivotal because of his reaction at the end of it. I'm sure you can imagine situations that you've been in where that sort of thing has happened. So what we're saying is recognise these pivotal plays and then respond to them appropriately. Now, the response might be that you need to get closer to the action. It might be that you need to sell your call more conspicuously, more decisively than you might do if it was a simple routine call. And you may need to take extra time to cool frayed tempers. You might need to communicate with players, potentially with coaches, to cool them down. So this is just sort of general officiating education, that we don't referee the entire game in the same gear. Sometimes we do have to step up a gear and do things differently. And pivotal plays are situations where we need to do that. We've got a few new when in doubt principles in chapter 6. First one is that if in doubt, when in doubt, a charged team out precedes a foul that prevents the snap. So if at about the same time as a false start or a delay of game happens, for example, and Team A asks for a timeout, then assume that the timeout was requested before the foul. Just makes everybody's life simpler. Secondly, when in doubt, the referee should invoke Rule 343, that's the one on unfair clock tactics, when there's less than 5 minutes left in each half. Now, that's not saying that you should invoke Rule 43 always when there's a foul inside the last 5 minutes of each half. But if you're doubtful as to whether the play constitutes an unfair clock tactic or not, then when in doubt, it is. And finally, this represents a complete change of philosophy from when I started officiating. Now, it is a fumble rather than the run has ended. So if we're in doubt as to whether the runner lost control of the ball before his knee was down, we're now going to call that a fumble. When I started, our philosophy was that he was down. We didn't want to cause any undeserved fumbles, undeserved changes of possession. But now, having been able to watch lots of games on video and in slow motion, all the evidence from watching that video suggests that in those sort of 50-50 situations where we don't know whether the runner was down or the ball became free, it's not 50-50. In the vast majority of those cases, the ball came out before the runner was down. So that's why this when in doubt principle is now in favour of fumbles rather than the runner being down. We've got some updated or new points of emphasis in Chapter 1 of the Mechanics Manual. I always recommend people to read Chapter 1 because it's a bit of the Mechanics Manual that a lot of people often skip over. So, two things about penalty administration. One of them I've already mentioned twice, but it's so important that I'll mention it a third time, that we want to transmit all fouls over radio. And the second one is just to remind everybody that if you've thrown your flag for targeting, you must communicate with other officials who may have seen it, and do that before you do anything else. Do that before you commence the penalty administration process. Because the penalty is so severe, because the penalty is disqualification, we want to take every opportunity to think this through, to make sure that we've got it right. Of course, if we've got replay, then replay can help, but for the vast majority of us, on the vast majority of occasions, we don't have replay, so let's get some other human input that might help us get that call right. Another point of emphasis, actually this is something that we've explicitly written in Chapter 5 of the Mechanics Manual. It's never wise to carry the whistle in your mouth. It makes it too easy to blow inadvertent whistles. Another point is to pay particular attention to players who may have concussion. We've been doing that. We should have been doing that for forever. We've certainly been focusing on it for several years, but we've now added it as a point of emphasis. We also want people to be more aware of the time at the end of a half. And if you're aware, make everybody else aware. So people within your speaking distance. And also anticipate timeout requests from the head coach. If you're prepared to hear it, you're more likely to make him happy by granting the request in a timely fashion. Another point of emphasis is to remember that if the ball carrier gets pushed out of bounds, backwards or sideways, then by definition their forward progress must have been stopped in bounds. So you shouldn't be stopping the clock, you should be giving it a wind so that the clock keeps running. And then a couple of years ago we brought in a 40-second clock after touchdowns and kickoffs, so just to remind players of the play clock in those situations.